This is Jason Clemmons, Doctor of Chiropractic at the Rock Health and Wellness Center, and this is Friday night, January the 12th, right here from the Rock Health and Wellness Center studios in Lubbock, Texas, and on 98.7 Walk by Faith Radio and 1420 AM Lubbock Christian Nation. I hope you guys had a fantastic week. This was a great week for us at the Rock. It was a great set of shows that we did. And, you know, we reached a lot of people, or not a lot of people as compared to the planet, but a lot of people for us this week because we had got to introduce our team. If I could get my brain to work right tonight, we got to introduce our team a little bit. We got one member left, which is my wife. She runs the front and pretty much runs my whole life. And I'm still working on getting her on the show. We haven't quite gotten her here yet, but everybody else on the team at the moment, we've got some students that haven't had a chance to talk yet either, but we'll see if we can get them on here and talk about their experience. But we had a good time. We got to have Brooke Fisher on Monday, our movement specialist, got to come on the show, kind of introduce you to her, let her kind of share with you what we do in the gym and our brain rehab center, so that if you ever come into the office, or the people that do come into the office, they can kind of understand what that's all about. And then on Thursday night, we got to introduce Kim Van, our nutrition director, and talk about, which was last night, we got to talk about some of the things that we do from a nutritional standpoint. And so it's been a really good week here at the Rock. And today was really a fantastic day. Like I had a moment this morning where I kind of had an epiphany. And I got to go speak this morning at the New Neighbors Club, or New Neighbors Association. Miss Virginia Isasaga invited me. She's the president of that club. She invited me to go speak to them, and so I got to go to the Lubbock Women's Club and speak to those ladies and a few gentlemen this morning in the New Neighbors group. And I was getting ready to speak, and I was thinking about, you know, the first thing that we always talk about, and the thing that I think is the most important, is their why, right? Like, why does it make any difference? And I think it's funny because sometimes it just takes me a while to work things out. I just have to go through them and go through them and go through them. I don't know if you guys are like that or not. Maybe not. Y'all probably get it all right off the bat, just the first thing. But sometimes it just takes me months to kind of put it together, and I don't know if it could be brain damage from too many concussions when I was young. I'm not exactly sure why it works that way, but I was like, you know what? Some of them, everybody has a why. That's what really came to me. Everybody has a why. You might not understand your why yet, but you have a why. You have a reason that you're trying to live. You have a reason that you live on this planet. You have a reason that you're trying to be healthy. And so you may not know it. And I think what I've been trying to say over these last few months is you may not have developed it properly, and you may not really have spent much time thinking about it. And that's getting you blown around with every wind of change and the cunning and craftiness of men, right? As the book says. So there's a few things that we could do to improve. And I think that never stops. I think we can always improve our why and always continue to get better at understanding exactly what we're about. We clarify what we're up to. That's really what we are trying to do. But it just hit me this morning. It's like, whether they've clarified it or not, they still have a why. So they might just need some whats. I know y'all don't understand why that's funny, but it's really funny to me because that's what people ask me all the time. They just ask me for what's. Like, what are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to eat? How are we supposed to work out? The what's and the how's and those sort of things. That they come in and they ask me those questions, and some of you guys have asked me those questions on the show, and so it's coming around. It's coming around together. But I feel like this week is really good. I feel like the some of the things that we've been able to establish over these last 4 or 5, September, October, November, December, 4.5 months almost. Yeah. So 4.5 months we've been doing this show. I think some of the things that we've established are starting to come together a little bit and making a little bit of sense. Maybe it's just in my own brain that it makes a little bit of sense. But I'm hoping that maybe you're feeling like this is making a little bit of sense. Like the way that we keep coming back to the same things, and the way that we keep talking about the same things, and the taking health to church aspect of the show this week has really, it gets us into that mental health and what's going on with our mental health, and how can we improve our mental health, and what exactly is it? And so when we follow that up, like we did this week with the master and his emissary, and we start talking about exactly what that means, right? And remember what the definition of emissary is: a person sent on a special mission, usually as a diplomatic representative, right? So what Dr. McGilchrist is trying to say with the master and his emissary is that the right hemisphere of the brain is the master system of the brain. Oh, sorry. And so the right hemisphere of the brain is the master system of the brain, and the left hemisphere of the brain is the emissary. And it's the one that does the work. But sometimes the left hemisphere thinks it's in charge. It thinks it's the boss, and the right hemisphere is not firing properly. And I'm not trying to get too deep into that just yet, but I just wanted to I wanted to point that out because of how you take mental health and you start to break down mental health. And then you read the articles like we just read. I think we read it last night, the article about vitamin D, omega-3s, and exercise, and increasing quality of life and longevity in elderly people, right? Like those three things together. And the article that we read last Friday night when we talked about lifestyle medicine, right? We added that component to the whole thing. So now we're getting all these things starting to come together, and it's like the more we stack them, and the more we stack them, and the more we stack them, I think, to me, maybe it's starting to become a little bit more clear how they all fit together. And when we can use mental health, then we can use mental health to help us understand health, period. Like just exactly how does health work? And then we can start to really get into some of the reasons why we do what we do. And then we can start to understand, oh man, like I see what he's saying. And it's taken me a long time, right? I was a chiropractic patient for 12 years before I understood what the word subluxation meant, because I didn't have anybody explain it to me. I didn't have anybody explain it in a way that I could understand it, and no one ever taught me that. No one in any of my undergraduate degree classes taught me what subluxation was. No one in my graduate degree classes taught me what subluxation was. Nobody along the way, and my chiropractor for 12 years didn't even teach me what subluxation was because he thought I knew, and I didn't know what that word meant. I didn't have any idea what that word meant. I just heard him say it. But after a while, you start to understand it, and then after a while, you're just like, man, you know what? I think the thing that it does for me is it gives me hope. It really does. It really does give me hope, and that I can work my way out of whatever health issue that I have. I can work I've got a chance. I've got a chance to keep going. I've got a chance to be better. I got a chance to if I could just figure this little dude out, if I can get on my feet and get my feet moving, and all the things that we do together. And then I put some of the things, like some of the stuff up here, and I'll get into that as we go through the show tonight. But I think it's starting to come together. I think if you guys have been listening, and bless your hearts if you've been listening to these first 4 months, because it's been torture, I'm sure, for some of you, if you've been listening through this whole thing, because we obviously I haven't just jumped right out of the gates in front on this, and I know there's a lot of competition in the world, but I'm not trying to compete with those people. I'm trying to have everybody learn this information so that we can get well and be healthy and get along with each other and make the world a better place, right? So that's what we've been doing. And then when you think about the subluxation being interference in the nervous system and interference in the way that your brain fires, and that whole firing pattern, and how it actually fits together, and what the different parts of the brain are doing, and what if those different parts of the brain aren't exactly functioning like they're supposed to? Is there anything that I can do to help them function better? Is there a way that I can get is there a way that I can get my body to function better, and by making the parts of my brain function better? And we have this little diagram that you guys have seen a bunch of times, and if you guys are on the radio, you can go back to Walk by Faith Facebook page and you can see it again. But this little diagram that we've gone over multiple times is a picture of brain activity that, man, is health. Like, if we could get that done right there, you would see that into the middle. I kind of drew it a little bit more specific a little bit tonight, but just to show you how, like this, into the thalamus, down to the amygdala on the right side, like this little pathway that's coming down right here, hitting that amygdala, going up, hitting to that cortex. That cortex is now coming down and shutting off that amygdala, sending that information to the left. The left cortex is shutting off that left amygdala, and then back over to the right. And then there we go. Upper brain's in charge, lower brain's dampened, calmed down, sympathetic stress is calm, rational brain is working, flexor muscles are inhibited, peace is within us, and we got a chance. And we really do have a chance if we can manage that. So I wanted to take tonight, and I wanted to present just some slides that I think we've gone over before, but I want to go over them again now that we've had a little bit more conversation about it, because I noticed something the other night when I was getting ready for the show and going back through the introduction of the Master and His Emissary book. One of the things that I noticed is, having gone through the book already and really breaking down the book and going and really having the functional neurology stuff, doing the stuff that I've been doing, when I went back to the introduction and then I reread the introduction to make some of the highlights of it, what I found out was, like, I was leading it along. I really understood what Dr. McGilchrist is trying to say. And I want to point something out. Dr. McGilchrist is not giving his opinion on it. Like, I mean, I guess in a certain aspect, he's giving his take, the way that he sees it. But what he's doing is he's explaining to the best of his ability how it actually works. Like, I think there's merit in the way that it works. Just like Einstein was explaining how the universe worked, right? It's not a new concept to have a human being study so many other human beings and have enough time to meditate on things and get divine intervention and all the things that go along with that's what I looked up, epiphany. And it's like the first thing, the definition of epiphany, it was dealing with Christian values, something right there. And I was like, is that Ephesus, or is that like the Ephesians? Does that have something to do with that? I don't know what the root word was or where that came from, but that's kind of how I felt when I got kind of a download this morning about everybody has a why. Part of my responsibility is explaining to them that they have a why, helping them manifest that why and pull it out a little bit, pull out the reason that we want to be healthy. And that's what we're trying to do with this show, is pull out that, just like talk to each person. When Kim sat down last night and we started it was the first time she'd been on the social media and all that stuff on our show. And and I said, just think of a patient that you want to talk to, and then just look up there at the screen and just talk to that patient. Like, don't worry about all of the criticism that you might get or all of the nervousness that you might get. Just think of someone that you really do care about and you really want them to know this information. And then just talk to the screen as if that's what you're trying to do. And before I go on the show, almost every single time, that's exactly what I do. I try to think of some patient. I think of some little kid that I take care of his mom. Or I think of some middle-aged person that's trying to make it through the life and dealing with kids and grandkids and like I think of people older that are doing stuff and it's like just talk to them. Just talk to them. Just talk to them like you're trying to help them and explain what you know. And then for all of the rest of the people that just have some sort of criticism or whatever about what you're doing, just, man, who cares? Like let that stuff go. And that's the same type of deal. I mean, that goes back way in my upbringing, nearly from birth. It's like when we were at Texas Tech, and I've said this before, down the steps, right into the hall of the locker room, was that quote of the critic. It's not the critic who counts, or the one who points out who the strong man stumbled, or the doer of deeds could have done them better. The critic belongs to the one who's in the arena. The credit belongs to the one who's in the arena. That quote right there, like, it's like, man, just get in the arena and see what happens, and people will say what they say, and people will do what they do, and they'll like you and they won't like you, and then they'll turn you off and do all the rest of that stuff. Whatever. None of that matters. I'm talking to you. And if you're on the radio, I'm talking to you. I'm speaking into this mic, specifically talking to you to try to help you live better. And we're trying to pull those whys out of you, but now we're starting to put all the whats together. So we have an opportunity to take our level, our knowledge to another level, so that we can be healthier than other people are. Like, how do I get to be 113 in my goal? And what am I going to do between 53 and 113? I've only got 60 years left. Like, if I can do math right, I've only got 60 years left. So what am I going to do in these next 60 years? Like, I think I'm going to help you. That's really what I think. I'm going to help you live a better life. And because of that, it's going to spread to other people. And you're going to help other people live a better life. So let's talk about it. Let's look at it just for a second, and we'll just break down some of this stuff. And we've gone through this. I think we've done this on the show before. I don't know if I've loaded this up. This is our Thinking for Health class. I've been teaching this class since 2009, and it goes along with our Eating for Health class. So we the Power of Food class that we've done, and we've talked about that, where we got into insulin, we got into omega-6-3 ratio and all that sort of thing. And I'm just going to run through some of these slides. You guys that are on the radio, well, I'll try to do as much description as I can so that you do understand it. But we'll just kind of take some of these as we go here, and I'm just going to run through it. You know, often when I say eat well, move well, and think well, and I say, well, that's Dr. Chestnut still, right? Well, I think he actually has a trademark on that, and so that's why I always say it. But there's Dr. Chestnut right there. He has a thing called the Wellness Practice. He's a go-getter. He's a super smart dude. He's a go-getter. He's all about wellness. He's all about chiropractic wellness, and he's about the science of chiropractic wellness, not the dogma of chiropractic wellness. So he's raised in academia, and I really have a lot of respect for him and the work that he's done. And he's really awesome. But this is his quote right here, right? There's not a single study ever published to validate the concept that human beings are genetically or innately programmed to develop chronic illness. There's not a single study ever published to validate the concept that human beings are genetically or innately programmed to develop chronic illness. All available research indicates that humans are innately genetically programmed for homeostasis and health. Now, I've been having this slide since 2009, I think, somewhere around there, that we've been teaching this class. And it's so interesting because what do we just found out just the other day. What did I do with? Yeah. So when we got that article that came out in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition on the impact of 8 lifestyle factors on mortality and life expectancy, right? And what they come down here and say, remember where they said they came out with the new term lifestyle medicine has been proposed as a way to address the root cause of chronic disease and their associated healthcare cost, right? As a lifestyle medicine treats the underlying cause of the disease rather than its symptoms, it provides a potential avenue for altering the course of spiraling healthcare costs incurred as a part of prescription medications and surgical procedures, which is really funny. And I'm not going to get off on that tonight. I'm not going to go sideways on that deal. But lifestyle medicine is the reason that's the reason we had the prescription medication and the surgical procedures in the first place. Right? But so we're not going to get off in that. But listen what it says right here. These chronic conditions are largely preventable. These conditions are attributed to non-adherence to a healthy lifestyle. 90% of diabetes, 80% of coronary artery disease, 70% of cardiovascular mortality, and 50% of cancer mortality. In this article done by people from Illinois College of Medicine, Harvard Medical School, and Emory University, right? That's what they're going to come up with, and that's what they're going to say right there, is these chronic conditions are largely preventable. These conditions are attributed to non-adherence to a healthy lifestyle. Well, yeah, of course they are. Like, that's then the reason that's true is the same thing that the wellness industry has been saying for a long, long time. There's not a single study ever published to validate the concept that human beings are genetically or innately programmed to develop chronic illness. We're not supposed to have chronic disease. We're not supposed to have diabetes. We're not supposed to have heart disease. We're not supposed to have some of these cancers, right? And so all available research indicates that says if you will put that cell in an environment that's congruent with health, you will express health. That's what he's really trying to say. Our cells are genetically designed to express health. That's what our body is made up of, is cells. Some people say 70 trillion, some people say 100 trillion. I don't know the answer to that question, but it's a lot. And so our bodies are made up of cells, and inside our cells are our DNA, our genetic library. But our DNA has to have an environment in order to express itself. And that's why I am an epigenetics person. I'm an epigenetics believer, not a genetics believer. And if you put a cell, I've got half my genes from my dad and half my genes from my mom. And to say to me that I'm going to develop a chronic disease because of my genetics that I got from my parents, I don't believe that to be true at one bit. I've got some of the same genetics that my dad has, who has arthritis and is miserable right now. Like, I have some of those same genetics, but he didn't know this information when he was in his 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s. He didn't have anybody doing one of these shows. There wasn't even a thing called an internet back then. And Jack LaLanne was the only person talking about exercise, and he was trying to do all kinds of crazy stuff with his face and pulling tugboats across the English Channel and all that stuff, right? So your DNA inside that cell is designed to express health. The DNA is designed to express health. It is not designed to create chronic disease. It's not designed to create cancer. I heard Judy Mikovits say that last week. We don't have oncogenes inside our body. We don't have genetics that tells us to make cancer. Cancer is a disruption from the normal. Cancer is when the normal processes of our body become interfered with. That's when we start to develop cancer. And what are they interfered by? Physical, chemical, and mental emotional stresses. The things that cause the subluxation. That's what's happening inside our cell. And if you put cells together, then what you get is you get tissues. So if you go to the stomach, if you go to the connective tissue, if you go to the smooth muscle, and smooth muscle is like the lining around your blood vessels, like parts of your organs, those sort of things, right? They're the columnar epithelium. Those are things that are like in your gut lining. That's what I was talking to one of my doctors this week that has been dealing with esophagus problems. And he said, you get this dysplasia, you get this change where these columnar epithelium turn into squamous cells, and they morph because of the stress that they're under, because of the acid that they're under, that's coming from the stomach that is causing that esophagus to burn, and it changes that columnar epithelium. Well, guess what? There was none of it on his scan. He just did a scope, and they can't find any of it anymore. The body, his esophagus has healed itself from what he had going on. So we're about to take a break on the radio. Hope you guys are enjoying the show so far, but we're going to come back in just a few minutes, and we're going to just keep going with this and see if we can pull it all together. I want to talk about all those things that we keep working on so that we can be as healthy as possible. So you guys stay tuned. This is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC, and we'll be back right after these messages. Sorry, I know that's weird. We're in the middle of a show, and but we're doing two shows at the same time, and it's a strange kind of show compared to some of the other podcasts that are out there. You have to take that break and go through there and do the commercial break. But I'm sure you guys are used to it at this point. But you get those cells together. You take those different kinds of cells, and you and you put the cells together, and you make different kinds of tissues, and that is something that I don't know if we necessarily think about it that way. I don't think we understand. Okay, look, it's not genetics that's causing me to have acid reflux. I'm not saying that there aren't sometimes an alteration in genetics, a predisposition to a certain disease, something that might drive us in a certain direction if we were to put ourselves in that environment. I'm not arguing with that, but I think it's going to be environmental related. It's going to have something to do with the way that the cell is being put in there, and the environment that the cell is being put in is going to dictate the genetics that the cell expresses. Now, I have right here on the one of my notes for early in the week, I told my daughter, "Sorry, you got my spine." That's what one of my patients told me, because her spine is horrible, and she's telling me, and her daughter has had a miserable experience all of a sudden with her spine. And it's like her daughter's putting herself in the same environment you put yourself in. And her daughter is putting herself in an environment that's incongruent with health. And there's some stubbornness going on right there with her as well, because she thinks that she can do it her way and still win. And she can't, because the cell doesn't care who you are or what you do or how many, what it doesn't make any difference. The cell doesn't care. If you're man or woman, white or black, rich or poor, makes no difference. If you put it in an environment that's congruent with health, it expresses health. If you put it in an environment that's not congruent with health, then it expresses symptoms and disease to let you know that you're in an environment that's incongruent with health. Let me get back to the show. Hey everyone, we're back. This is Jason Clemmons. It's January 12th, Friday night. We are enjoying our Friday night together. Glad you're with me. Glad you're listening to the show. Hope you guys are getting something out of it. So we've been talking about cells. So we talked about cells and putting cells together. And when you put cells together, you get tissues. When you put tissues together, you get organs. If your stomach, your lungs, your liver, your gallbladder, if those things aren't working, then that tissue's not working, which means that cell's not working, which means that body's in an environment that's incongruent with health. And see how it's starting? I hope it's starting to come together right there. Organs make up people. So therefore, we are genetically designed to express health and wellness. We are designed to express health and wellness. We are not designed in any form or fashion to express chronic disease. If we are getting chronic disease, we are misusing the vessel. We are treating the vessel wrong. That's what we're doing with it, right? So what are we doing to ourselves? Well, we remember this whole stress response thing. Any toxicity or deficiency in relation to the innate genetic environmental requirements, let me just back up a little bit. If your body's in an environment that's incongruent with health, you will create a stress response. And the 5 stages are the alarm, adapt, fatigue, illness, and death. That's what's going on inside your body. When we go back with every part of what we're trying to do to keep you well, we're going back to those things right there. Are you in an environment in your exercise life that's creating an alarm situation? Is your heart rate too high? Is your blood pressure too high? Are you starting to get stiffness in your joints? Those are things right there that it's like, okay, that's a physical component, that there's something that we're trying to tell us right there, that's not working for you. There's the alarms. I can't reach over and touch my toes. Oh man, my hamstrings are so tight. That, all those sentences that we get, those are warning shots that the tissue, the cells are trying to give to us to tell us, hey, look, man, I'm trying to adapt. I'm trying. So what do you mean by that, right? Okay, I sit at a chair for 20 years at a desk looking at a computer, right? And my legs are bent. And my legs are bent, which means my hamstrings are shortening. So now when I stand up and I try to stand up and move, my hamstrings are short. So how does my brain adapt to that situation? I had a lady this week who had hurt her back before. She was doing a rowing at her gym. She was doing a rowing metric workout and a kettlebell swing combination. And those two things together, if you're not careful, they will make your back hurt. They'll cause low back problems and make your back hurt. And so what was she doing? She hurt her low back, right? So she reported to me yesterday that over the break, first of all, let me back up one second. She didn't want to come see me last week because her back hurt and she thought it might make it worse. So she stayed away for a week. Well, let me tell you, I'm not a back pain guy, but there is so much research on low back pain and chiropractic care that we're almost like the world winners of that. Like if there's one thing that all of the research says that we do really well, and that's help low back pain. So if you're that would not be the sound thought process, is to stay away from that. Okay. But one thing that she reported to me was that when she got up when she was at home for this over the Christmas break, and she'd gotten sick and she'd hurt her back and the whole thing was miserable. She said, I just felt so weak. My lower body just felt so heavy and so weak when I tried to stand up that I didn't feel like I was going to be able to walk. Okay, what does that mean to me as the doctor? What it means to me is she's already had the alarm. Her body gave her the alarm. It's in the pain and all the rest of that thing. It's trying to adapt. It's trying to recalibrate how it's going to move you, how you're going to ambulate, how you're going to walk through the room. It's trying to recalibrate and try to figure out which one of the 605 muscles I can use to try to figure out what I'm supposed to do. And it's more than 605 muscles, I think, because that just counts one side of the body. if I'm remembering that right. I didn't even count the other side of the body. So that your brain has to try to say, all right, which muscles am I going to do? And what is it doing? It's adapting, right? It's going through the stress response. It had that stressor that it couldn't adapt to, that stressor that caused the body that the toxicity or a deficiency. Well, think of abnormal movement as a toxic movement, right? You were on the rowing machine and you didn't lock your back into place and you didn't keep your lumbar spine tight and you didn't hinge at your hips and you didn't hinge at your knees, and you ended up leaning forward on the rowing machine and backing back out. So what are you doing to your lumbar spine over and over and over again? You're creating that flexion extension. And what is that doing to your low back? It's wearing that disc. That lumbar spine's not supposed to bend that way. It has the capacity to bend that way, but it's not supposed to bend that way over load. Where you really should be bending is from the hip joint. So we get into the trying to adapt, and then we fatigue. And that's what she was telling me. I feel fatigued. I don't have any power in my legs. And what's going to happen next? That whole thing's going to get worse. We've got to get that corrected. We got to get that power turned on. Sometimes time does it. Sometimes you just lay down and be still and just rest it, and your body heals itself and it handles it. But sometimes that subluxation, that's what I call it. That's what chiropractic calls it, subluxation. Sometimes that subluxation is what needs to be addressed, because otherwise the death in that particular case is the cell death that happens in the joint, not the human death. We're not talking about she's going to die from that, but the cell death that happens. And then that's what you end up with, a thing called degeneration. You get spinal degeneration. And if you go to the doctor, they'll call it arthritis. They'll say those things, right? Because that's what the body's doing. The body is putting itself in that environment. We've put ourselves in the environment that is going like that. We can't adapt to an environment that's incongruent with health. That's incongruent with our genetic code. We can't do it right there. So what happens to us when we're stressed out? So this is Mental Health Week a little bit. We talked about it when we took health to church. We talked about it Wednesday with Master and his emissary, right brain, left brain stuff, right? So what is the physiology of stress? What exactly is, what's happening with our brain when and the different parts of our brain? And for you guys that are listening on the radio, we have a picture right here of the brain, and it's a beautiful picture with blue and green and pink and all that sort of thing. And I wish it was that beautiful, but it's not. It's not that color. But there, you can see now that you see this picture, you can start to see the multiple areas of the brain. It's like, okay, all right, what is he saying? What, like, remember this one? Like, okay, there's this little drawing of the brain, of the right hemisphere over to the left hemisphere, and how that little process works. Well, now we can see it right here, and we got different parts. So we've got a better picture that we can kind of understand kind of how that flows, right? So our brain it's amazing. It's a super amazing, but I don't want to get into that. But it does have different functions. And this is one of the things, if one of my guys is watching the show tonight that are listening to the show, this slide right here, and you can go back to the Walk by Faith and watch this on Facebook if you're listening to the show on the radio. But there are different functional systems within your nervous system. You've got the somatic part of your nervous system, that's what fires to the muscle, and it's just contraction, just brain to muscle contraction, very simple. Then the autonomic system, and that's what we've talked about a bunch, and we'll talk about it here in a minute. And then that enteric system, because this person has diverticulitis, and every once in a while it flares up on him, and he could just feel it rumbling in there. And I was trying to explain to him, hey, you actually have a nervous system that runs your gut, and so there's different types there. So and it controls the organs, right? So let's walk through just a second, again, like we've walked through before, but let's walk through it now that we kind of have a little bit better feel of it and we have a little bit better idea of what's going on. Let's walk through the body is going to detect a stimulus that represents a physical threat or toxicity and or deficiency. So the body now is going to feel that stimulus. There's going to be an alligator in the room. There's going to be some sort of threat that our body detects. And regardless of whether or not there's an actual alligator in the room, or you remember an alligator that was in the room in the past, or you're fearful of an alligator that might be in the room tomorrow, the physiology you express is the same. The environment that you put the cell under is the same, regardless of which one we're dealing with. One of my girl this week, that the doctor's report that never had anybody explain to her exactly how things were working, was freaking out over Monday's storm that we're going to have in Lubbock, because she doesn't know if she's prepared to handle weather. She doesn't know what to do if it's freezing, and what happens if the power goes out, and what happens if I can't get any food, and what happens if, right? That's an alligator. That's an alligator to her, because she's fearful of that, and that now her body's going to start to express some physiology, and that's going to start to change the way it works. But this is the part that I skipped over the first time that we did it, that I want to go back to, and I want to kind of touch on with a little bit better depth. When you encounter that stressor, whether it's real or you made it up in your head, your nervous system is going to send the information to the sympathetic nervous system located in the IML tract, where the stress response or fight or flight response happens. And that IML tract is in your spinal cord. You're going to hit that amygdala. You're going to go back to the amygdala. You're going to, that whole thing, what's happening now is with this amygdala that's down here, that's going to start the stress response. That's going to start firing off some things, and it's going to fire into the spinal cord so that you can come down to that adrenal gland down there. And that's that firing pathway is this mechanism that all of a sudden that lower brain didn't get shut off, because that upper brain's not 100% sure if that threat is real or it's not real. If your upper brain is still thinking about that threat might actually be real, then we're gonna initiate the stress response. And the stress response is this is sympathetic. All sympathetic activities are going to increase. Heart rate, blood pressure, increased blood sugar. And what would that do to you? Do you think, maybe you do now at 4.5 months after listening to this show, but do you think 4.5 months later that I've got high blood pressure? Why do I have high blood pressure? Like, why is my body detecting a stressor or a threat? Why is my body kicked in the sympathetic response? What is causing my body to increase its blood pressure? We don't think about those things. We go to the doctor, we have high blood pressure, and then the doctor says, you better have a blood pressure medication. And we say, okay. And we're 36 years old, or we're 42 years old, or we're 50 something years old, and that's what we do. That's what our granddaddy did. That's what our uncles do. That's what our cousins do. All of our cousins are on some sort of medication. All of our friends that we know are on some sort of blood pressure medication. I guess I'll just get on a blood pressure medication. And not one time do I actually think to myself, wait a minute, what exactly am I doing to those cells? What environment am I putting those cells under that's causing me to now express blood pressure increase? What am I doing to myself? And do I even realize that I'm doing that? Not usually not, right? And increased blood sugar. So what does increased blood sugar do? Increased blood sugar increases insulin, right? There we go. Now here we go back to the two main things that we talk about when we're talking about nutrition. We talk about controlling our insulin and balancing our omega-6-3 ratio. This right here is liquid gold as far as I'm concerned. This is liquid fish oil, 2,000 something milligrams, almost 3,000 milligrams per teaspoon right here of liquid fish oil, right? And that's just one of those things that we talk about. Here's the pill form of it, but those are the things that we talk about when we're getting into nutrition. So why do we care about nutrition? Well, because there's going to be a sympathetic response, and that sympathetic response is going to increase our blood sugar, which is going to control. What if the sympathetic response is the refined carbohydrate? What if our alarm is the refined carbohydrate? What if the alarm is the sugar? The sugar is causing the amygdala to fire. The soda is causing the amygdala to fire. That chemical stress that we're dealing with right there is the reason that the amygdala is firing, and it's the reason that the sympathetic nervous system is firing, and it's the reason that the blood pressure is going up. Maybe it's too many cookies, or maybe it's too many cinnamon rolls, or maybe it's too many chocolate bars, or whatever our thing is, right? And so all parasympathetic activities are going to decrease. Sex glands, sex drive, digestion, growth hormone production, cellular immunity. Like immunity, immune system, our immune system. How many of you are sick? How many of us have been sick? How many of us have been sick? How many people do you know right now in this winter that are sick? A bunch of us. There's a bunch of people that are sick. I wonder what caused my immune system to go down. I wonder what is going on. That's one of the things that I wrote, that I went back through my functional neurology notes and just had them out for tonight in case I needed them. But right here in the middle of the page, decreased testosterone equals male adrenal fatigue. Adrenal fatigue. Why would I have adrenal fatigue? Because I'm firing that sympathetic nervous system, and that amygdala is firing that IML, and that IML is wearing that adrenal gland out. Because in nature, that alligator is either going to eat me or it's not going to eat me. And it's going to happen in about 90 seconds. If I see that alligator, I'm going to move fast away from that alligator. And I'm going to hope those big old jaws don't get a hold of me and we have a wrestling match under the water, right? But whichever way that's going to happen, it's going to happen really fast. I'm not going to have adrenal fatigue from a real alligator. I'm not going to have that stress from the real alligator. I'm going to have that stress from the other alligators that I create in my own environment by not adhering to a healthy lifestyle. That's how we get the diabetes and the chronic heart disease and those cancers that those boys from Harvard are talking about. That's what we're saying right there, that we're doing to ourselves, right? That the sympathetic nervous system, IML, sends a message directly to the adrenal glands. The adrenal glands will release the adrenaline, noradrenaline, the epinephrine, the norepinephrine, the glucocorticoids, which is the cortisol, so we can coagulate our blood, so we can increase our blood sugar. But the detrimental effects of chronic HPA axis activation, from obesity to memory deficits, this was Gladstone Institute of Neurological Diseases, University of California. Molecular Neurobiology, 1998. Increased evidence suggests that detrimental effects of glucocorticoid hypersecretion, too much cortisol, occurred by activation of the HPA axis in several human pathologies, including obesity, Alzheimer's, AIDS, dementia, and depression. Right? Too much of that firing pattern into that right hemisphere that's not controlled properly, that we're not handling properly, causes that IML to fire down into that adrenal gland, and now that adrenal gland gets worn out, because in nature, it wouldn't be firing that way. We would either be dead in 90 seconds or we would be away from that alligator. And then we just have a good old story to tell about how we got away from that alligator. Right? So that's what happens when we fire into that IML. And now all those things are going to happen, and that's going to stimulate the amygdala in the brain so that emotional anxiety memories dominate during stress. We need to have emotional anxiety memories in order to keep us from getting eaten by the next alligator. If I walk down to the creek and I lean down and I get a drink of water and that alligator jumps at me, I need to remember next time that I go down to the creek, be careful, the alligator might be in the water, right? That's why I have an amygdala that it remembers those things. It helps me survive when I'm getting stressed so that I can have the memory of all the other times that I've been stressed. Well, if we get stuck in that right hemisphere, and that right hemisphere is in the unknown, and that amygdala is firing, then we're going to start to lose our ability to function because now we're starting to get an inhibition of our frontal lobe. We're losing our rational brain. And by losing our rational brain, now factual learning, working memory, and the ability to focus attention stops. Why does the ability to focus attention stop? Remember that? The ability to focus attention stops because focused attention is on the left hemisphere. We're stuck. We're not getting this piece. We're not getting this right side to left side. This is the right, this is the left. We're not getting the right side to the left side information because we're stuck over there in the right hemisphere because we're stuck with activation of the amygdala on the right side. That's what's going on that side right there. And this is not new stuff. I've been teaching the same class in the office since 2009, and it's not 2009 stuff either. It's been happening since the beginning of human beings. I just came to the party in 2009. But factual learning, working memory, and the ability to focus attention. If your child is ADHD or ADD, it's because their activation in the right hemisphere is overactivated and their left hemisphere is underactivated. They're not getting that proper movement. They're not getting the thing that they need right there. That's what's going on right there. So all of those things will happen. The amygdala hits the locus coeruleus. The locus coeruleus releases the noradrenaline, which has the affinity to the right hemisphere, right? Logical behavior, short-term memory goes away. Emotional learning and instinctive behavior becomes the thing. Emotional learning and instinctive behavior. I got to get mine. To heck with you. I'm getting mine, right? Because empathy comes from that upper right brain, that right hemisphere. Then we get the increase in sensitivity and our pain goes up. And then it just all starts to fall apart on us right there. So before we leave, because we're just about in the end of the show right now, before we leave, I want to leave you on a positive note tonight. I don't want to leave you on a stressed out note. That's what can we do, right? But that's why we walk. That's why we exercise. That's why we try to get a good sleep. That's why we try to do those things that are healthy. That's why we take our fish oil. That's why we take our multivitamin. We're just about to the point where now anywhere you're watching, anywhere in the world, if you want to get your standard process from us, we will have. We're just about to have that launched to where you can get that anywhere at any time through a website where you can now order your standard process and order it yourself. But this is my multivitamin. This is my Catalin. This is my vitamin C. It's called Cyruta Plus. Comes from buckwheat. Dr. Fraley's the one that hooked me up with that. This is my fish oil, the fish oils that we take, right? The exercise that Leslie and I did this morning. We did our exercise, and we're watching our foods. Those are the things that we do to help these pathways work, and that's the way we keep our mental health better, and that's the way we keep our overall health better. I hope this made sense. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm starting to even enjoy it more, and so I hope it's going great for y'all. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and we will be back Monday at 6 o'clock. So have a great weekend.